G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and with the recent release of the Horus Heresy Legacy of the Age of Darkness Units PDF, I got to go on a little vent due to my perception of the poor quality. This obviously rankled with some, who, even despite a roundtable with 3 other presenters where we all came to the conclusion that they did a terrible job on the PDF and explained in our live stream over 4 hours why, many viewers came to the channel to simply comment on our attitude and how the salt doesn't help when we're just whinging man-children. So today I'm going to take this argument in good faith and assume that the people didn't watch the video or didn't quite understand the issue. So I'm going to lay down the salt, put it to the side, and simply use logic here. Okay, I'll sprinkle a little salt at the end. Somehow. Those who want to be fair-handed will, hopefully from understanding this video, come away with a different point of view. And those who actively dislike this channel obviously won't be swayed or probably won't watch the video in the first place, so it won't matter at all what they think. So, first and foremost, a minor point when it comes to this PDF here. People call me entitled when I posted screenshots to ForgeWorld of the ruined units and simply and bluntly stated, fix it. They proposed, in my opinion, erroneously, that I should simply email them the corrections, and that way the corrections could be made. I can categorically say that this approach unfortunately does not work, whether it's my 10,000 signature petition on regional pricing, or the playtesters pointing out obvious mistakes prior to publication, or when Radio Free Istvan mailed the writing team a cake with a community-fixed FAQ for 1.0 rules in 2018, which fixed every error in the system. A cake which I'll add was received and eaten by the company as it was tracked and signed for. It all ultimately goes ignored. I am direct and blunt with the company, as the company will not listen. They will not listen to constructive feedback. They will not listen if you sugarcoat it. They will not listen if you send them a literal cake. I know this, and I've come to terms with this, and I think most of you listening now understand they don't do great rules, and they don't listen at all. To those telling me to be more polite and understand what's happening, please know this. Where I'm coming from, the blunt terms I'm using are not malicious in nature. It's merely me trying not to waste my time whilst pointing out the problem exists to the company that is dutifully going to ignore it, because the people in the social media team and the email department are not the people in charge of making the decisions. So, that nastiness aside, let's look at the units and compare and contrast errors in the book, as this is the main point I'd like to make today. And because of this, I'd first like to preface it a little and give some context. The units in here are legacy units, okay? So, it could be Nathaniel Garrow, it could be, Legion Malkador Assault Tank Squadron. And when it comes to legacy units, okay, they were the units that didn't make it into the new book, despite, in many cases, still being made and still for sale. This is likely because they don't have plans to turn this stuff into plastic. Now, the company deigned to provide free rules updates for them in the form of this PDF, but ultimately, this is merely the cut content which has been grudgingly shared with the community to keep people from whinging that their armies are now ruined from the last edition. This isn't to say that people shouldn't be adaptive and embrace new rules and new units, but rather, if you had, say, an Iron Warriors siege army, where the Medusas of your army pounded the table center with phosphex, and you built your army around that theme, losing those units was a very bitter pill for an already bitter legion to swallow. Then, upon regaining said unit, you find out it's been dramatically reduced in performance on the tabletop to such a degree that it's almost unrecognizable. That's going beyond the scope of adapting tactics to a wholly different question of ethics when it comes to rules writing. As they bought the model, they paid for what it brought to the table then, not the current shadow of its former self. So, do not take this as an advocacy for overpowered units. One of the X Games Workshop designers said, and I quote, "Legacy units should really exist so people who already have this stuff can use it. Not to go and pick randomly OP stuff to make for the whack list." That's the win at all costs list. I guess it's always your hobby though, and people are ultimately free to make their own bad choices. To me personally, this is sidestepping the issue. Legacy units shouldn't be an auto-include, but they deserve to have viability on the tabletop and be correctly priced for what they deliver. This should be done as a simple courtesy to the people who forked over large quantities of hard-earned money for the models years ago. Don't make the models nigh on useless, which many of these models have simply become. There's a great misconception that people want overpowered units. They don't. Generally what they want is viability, not overpowered. So, a good example of this might be, say, the Legion attack bike, for instance, okay? Let's see, where is it in here? So the Spatha attack bike squadron you can see here, 55 points. It's a 2 marine attack bike, but it only has the stats of a single model on there. Even the land speeder has stats for the 2 marines that are in the land speeder. It's toughness 4. All other bikes in the game are toughness 5, as they have been for the last 30 years in Warhammer. For some reason, it's Hammer of Wrath 1. Okay, you can live with that. It's not bulky or anything like that, so even though it's 2 marines on a big bike, it has less mass on the battlefield than, say, Terminators do. And when it comes to its options, at 55 points for the original bike and 50 for each additional bike, they are far more expensive than similarly armed other units. Units of comparable power, such as the Scimitar jet bike, which I think is better in every single way than this model. So, it's a poor choice. But there are much worse choices out there. So, if we go down further in this PDF, somewhere into the 30s here, I'm going to say maybe 37, nope, 38, the Shadow Sword. So, this is one of the best comparisons we can do. Let's compare the Legion Falchion, which is in the main book, to the Shadow Sword. Now, the Shadow Sword is a cheap plastic model freely available from Games Workshop, has been in production since about the year 2007 in plastic. Cool. The Falchion is essentially this plastic kit with a whole bunch of resin upgrades from Forge World, and it's a very expensive kit, a bit of a pain to put together, but a really nice looking cool model. That's the trade-off. So, the Falchion, it has movement 12, so 2 inches further than the Shadow Sword. Its armor value on the front is 14, so higher but equal everywhere else. Same ballistic skill, same hull points. On the sponsons, the Falchion has 2 las cannon arrays, which are 2 shots each, strength 9, range 48 inches with twin linked and sunder. So, additional bonuses for armor piercing. And the option of becoming laser destroyers for free, which gives them Ordnance 2, AP1, and Exoshock. Combating this, the Shadow Sword brings a paltry 2 regular las cannons and a combined total of 3 twin-linked heavy bolters. Both tanks can take the same pintle weapons, except for the stubber option, which no one is ever taking. And lastly, of course, the most important part, the main gun. The Falchion by default is a twin-linked version of the exact same gun of this tank, with the option of upgrading it to a neutron wave cannon, which is a very devastating weapon. So, despite being better in the main gun, the armor, the speed, and with what I suggest are certainly better secondary weapons, the Falchion is 200 points cheaper than the Shadow Sword here. Just say that after me, nice and slowly. 200 points. What is 200 points? That's 2 10-man tactical squads. That's 20 Space Marines. It's an upgraded 5-man Terminator squad. It's the cost of a fully equipped Legion Praetor. This is beyond the realm of you take it because it's cool and fits the narrative, because cool shouldn't have to be at the expense of performance, and this tank is allowing the other player in a 3,000 point game or a 4,000 point game to take 10 to 15% more stuff in their army, as well as you having the worst unit in a 1-for-1 basis. To me, that's kind of insane. And it goes even further down that rabbit hole when you go to the next page and you look at the Storm Sword and the main gun on the Storm Sword, which, for all intents and purposes, is an identical tank to the Shadow Sword. However, the Storm Sword drops that 120-inch range, strength 14, AP1, destroyer 1, large blast, ignores cover, volcano cannon, for a weapon with 6 times shorter range, 2 lower points in strength, 2 points worse in AP, non-destroyer, but rending and sundering with a brutal 3. Which weapon floats your boat more? How does a weapon which is so much worse somehow justify the same cost between these two tanks, which we already established? The first one, the Shadow Sword, which is clearly better than the Storm Sword, is already far, far worse than the Legion Falchion. How do you justify it? We have established already that the regular tanks in the main book are just superior, and the Falchion, it isn't even the top pick of the litter when it comes to Lords of War, yet is so many leagues above these as to be criminal. Next, you take a unit like the Legion Whirlwind, okay? So, the Legion Whirlwind here, 120 points. 120 points for a single tank. Not a squadron, like the previous edition, but a single tank, a single heavy support slot for this. What do you get? A single Strength 6 AP4 Large Blast, a Strength 7 AP4 Breaching 4+, Small Blast, or a Strength 7 AP3 Single Shot, which can only be fired at aircraft. For the same points, you can buy a Predator tank, which has higher armor. It comes with 2 heavy bolters and a 4-shot Strength 7 AP4 Rending main gun. It can also come in squadrons of 5, by the way. So the same problems also exist here for Medusas and Basilisks, because they go from the AP2 and AP3 respective menaces that they were on the battlefield in every edition since 2nd. Their main guns are now high strength, but only AP4. You get the choice of rending, but short range, or long range and shredding, or for re-rolling wounds against infantry. Literal artillery pieces designed to shatter reinforced bunkers can be saved as normal by the most basic power-armoured infantry in the game now. So, I'm unsure what led to this, but all the template weapons have suffered. I've noticed this in the main book, and I notice it especially in this PDF, and I put it down as a side note to either of these conspiracies. 1. The riders don't want precious power armor to die. 2. The riders don't want you to use these units. Or 3. The riders don't want templates in the game and want to move towards 9th edition 40k, and their best method to do this is by making us loathe templates. Choose your poison. Now, it could just be that these are innocent mistakes, but when you see units like Chaplain Nomus Raitan, who was a Praetor level character, turned into the stat line of a basic tactical marine with extra wounds and still priced at 215 points, you have to wonder. You get units like the Hammerfall Bunker added to the game, surprisingly, which is not necessarily a Primaris unit, but was released alongside a whole swath of Primaris releases in the latest Marine release. But fan favourites like Casterman Orth, who's an Iron Hands tank commander, vanished like Thanos snapped his fingers. It's a bizarre choice, and writers, they'll make mistakes. People make mistakes, okay? The mistake is not the issue, it's the resolution. It's how the problem is addressed. And Games Workshop, they consistently create these mistakes in all of their published works, and in my eyes, that's not the problem. The irredeemable issue is that it's an $8 billion valued company creating these mistakes and sitting on it. The PDF is so simple, you could pull it down, edit this PDF, and re-upload it in the same night when people start coming to you with all the problems. But it's too hard for the people who wrote it. That's too much work. This is the source of my ire. That's the source of my blunt attitude. I see the community reaction towards this, and I think to myself, we've enabled it. If everyone got on the threads and you said, you ruined this PDF with bad writing, you may get results out of the company because they'll feel pressured. But unfortunately, the threads are full of people fawning from the community, which basically induced a chronic bout of cringe in me. Demand better, please, guys. I mean, I'll demonstrate now how to fix some of these units, and it's going to take me all of 5 minutes to do it. I'll throw together, a couple of different slides just for the purposes of demonstrating it at the end of this video. But come on, guys. I shouldn't have to be writing articles or producing videos like this to explain these problems to the community and still having members of the community turn around and go, it's fine, who cares? Because if they don't care if this PDF is any good, great. You have no say in the argument, so just walk away from it. and let those of us who do have an issue, let us have our say. But people can't do that. They need to defend the faceless corporation because I think they've built their persona around the company. An attack on the company is an attack on them, and it can't be left to lie. And that's disappointing. Anyway, here's some PDF changes I would make. I think it's pretty common sense what I've done and why. You guys decide for yourselves. Mac with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.